Hey everyone, we're here with Barbara Wideline. She's from majoringinmusic.com, here to tell us about applying to music schools and finding out information about majoring in music or minoring in music in college. This is 1905 Main Street. Barbara is in charge of the website majoringinmusic.com, which is a really great resource for everyone who is interested in pursuing music in college and in graduate school and even beyond as a career. So, for the musicians who are still entirely unsure of where they want to go or what's right for them, how's your website a good place to kind of narrow down that decision?
Great. So I'm going to address all of you as I answer the questions, because this will probably ring true for at least some of you. So majoringinmusic.com has a wealth of information to help you look at whether majoring in music is even the right fit for you. There are a lot of current music majors as well as faculty at music schools who will tell you this, and they're gut honest about this, which I love. Major in music only if it's the only thing you can think that you would ever want to do. Only if you have the kind of passion that it takes to have probably the hardest curriculum in college that you could possibly have. Even harder than if you'll watch your roommate who might be an engineering major or a biology major or any number of other majors. As a music major, you're probably going to be working more hours, taking more classes, having more credits, spending more time in practice rooms. And let's face it, unless you're incredibly passionate about what you're doing, why would you do that to yourself, right? So that's the number one thing you really have to think about. How much fire under me do I really have to take on what this is about? Because this is serious business. And I know there are lots of cartoons. Anybody ever see a cartoon of kind of poking fun at a music major that they just get to kind of hang out and listen to music all day, and it's like the easy way to college? Anybody ever see a cartoon like that? I certainly have. Family members may say to you, "You're majoring in what?" Anybody have a family member that, might really scratch their head and say, "What are you going to do with that?" Yeah. So it happens for a lot of people because it's in many ways a misunderstood major, and fear of what are you going to do when you graduate. So that's a really important concern. And so back to your question, majoringinmusic.com really does address all those kinds of questions, including the kinds of things that parents and family members may be asking you or themselves about. Well, gosh, what's going to happen when you graduate? And that's a whole nother part of the website to really address what can you do with a music degree. I mean, you can see it behind me. There's a lead article right now, and there are all kinds of different careers that are highlighted, and a lot of them link to articles about people who are in those careers, so you can get a taste of what that's about. Does that answer?
Absolutely. And I have some other questions just about applying to music schools and kind of what that application process is like, and whether it's important to have a good academic profile regarding GPA, test scores, class rank, and then also how to handle the stress of auditions on top of all of that.
Great questions. Anybody here getting ready to do pre-screens or thinking about auditions for getting into school next year? Okay. So if you're a senior and you're thinking of majoring in music, this should be on your radar. So again, we do address all of this on the website, but let me be really upfront about this. No two schools are alike in terms of what they are going to ask from you, and that's what makes it so tricky. Do not make any assumptions, because what one school asks for in terms of GPA, in terms of ACTs or SATs, in terms of pre-screen, in terms of audition, is entirely different than the next school. And that's true of all the schools. What they want you to audition with is different. So as a potential music major, you have to look really closely at each school's audition requirements. And one of the things that we do on majoring in music is that any of the schools that are that have their own participating pages on the sites, and there are about close to 4 dozen now. They have links to the most important information that as a prospective music major, you and your families need to find. So you don't have to wade through lots of clicks through their websites. The links will get you directly to the information on their website. So it's really worthwhile if any of those schools look like they may be a potential interest to you. But the most important thing is to not assume that any 2 schools are going to want the same thing from you. Some schools do not care about your GPA, about your SAT scores or your ACT scores. They'll tell you, yeah, send them as part of your supplemental information, but that's not going to be how we're going to judge you. That said, if you want to apply to a school that is academically rigorous and competitive, and I think of USC as one of them, all of that stuff matters. And so schools are all over the map. There are schools you can go to major in music that do not require you to audition. They'll place you, they'll audition you when you get there because they want to know what level you're at. All the schools are going to, in some way, do a music theory placement. Again, they want to know, where do you stack up and what do we need to teach you? But the schools are totally different, so I can't give you one answer about what you need to do. That is part of your work as a prospective music major.
You talked a lot about different application processes, different requirements. So obviously all these schools vary differently just in the application process, but what about their varying feeling kind of behind the school and the kind of personality of each school, like USC versus Columbia College in Chicago versus Berklee School of Music?
This is a great question. I think the most important thing you can do for yourself is to look at how you feel about a school. What's the fit like for you? Okay, even though it looks like the best school in the world and you've heard lots of people talking about it, it may not be the right fit for you. I can tell you a story. My son, who went through music school, had a friend in high school who was a very talented, I think she was a violinist. She got into Juilliard. I mean, everybody hears about Juilliard, top of the heap for all kinds of music. Not so much songwriting, but for jazz, for classical. She spent 1 year there and she transferred. Yes, it was a fabulous school, but it wasn't the right school for her. So for her, it wasn't fabulous. So do yourselves a favor, don't go to school based on somebody else's recommendation. It's really important that you look at what's important to you. We do have a great article about the kinds of things you can look at and think about before you ever go off to school. And there are things like, well, who would you study with? And how would you fit in with that person? So one of the things we recommend is you start narrowing your choices down. If you really are thinking about majoring in music, and I didn't scare you off with what I said in the beginning, then, who might be your private teacher? That's the person, your studio teacher, who you'll probably be with for 4 years. That's a lot of, think about what you were doing 4 years ago. Think about how different you were. So 4 years is a long time. You don't want to be studying with somebody who you can barely wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I have to take a lesson with them today. You really want a good fit. So that's really important. What about the other students there? Do you feel like these are students you could enjoy social life with, you could collaborate with in the classroom, in the studio, in the practice room? If those kinds of things don't fit for you, that school doesn't fit for you. And I have to say, even if they want to give you a bunch of money, obviously you'll look again at those kinds of things. But if it doesn't fit for you, those are going to be not only are going to be 4 tough years because music is a tough field, but they're going to be 4 really tough years because it's not where you belong.
So you did mention that your son went to music school,
yes.
And that you, I'm sure you helped him out emotionally, financially, all throughout those 4 years. But what should a student do if they approach their parents about their idea to go to music school or their dream to go to music school, and their parents are hesitant or worried about what their student may be able to do with that career?
So this is a great question, and this is a beginning of your life as a, let's see, basically promoting yourself and your needs and your interests. And if you're interested in any of the popular music programs, music industry, this is going to be a big part of what you have to do, because you're going to have to think of yourself as a business as you're going through school, and especially once you graduate, in order to be able to get the kind of work that's going to put food on the table, pay the rent, etc. So this is a great opportunity for you to, first of all, get really clear about why do you want to major in music? And at this point in time, what do you think you want to do with it? So that when you approach family members, you can show them that you're not just kind of, it's not off the top of your head. This is a serious, passionate interest. So you're kind of going to have to prove that. And this is great training for being able to go in and be interviewed for any of the schools you want to go to, whether or not you end up going to music school. I mean, you really have to believe in yourself and show your passion. That goes such a long way, because one of the things I've really learned about all schools, and especially music schools, because you have to go through an audition, and a lot of students are frightened of that. I mean, obviously, this, you know, you may not be asked, and a pre-screen even, you may not be asked to come to that school. So, you know, it's kind of high stakes. The schools are looking for you to be an honest representation of yourself. Believe me, they can see through anything. It's kind of like little kids can see through their parents when their parents aren't being honest. The music school people who audition you can do the same thing. They're really looking to see how they can teach you. So that I hosted a panel last week, and we had several faculty member and music school students on that panel. And students asked a question about, well, gosh, what if I'm not good enough in my audition? And the faculty people all said the same thing. We are not looking for perfect auditioners. We are actually looking for honest students who show talent and who we think we can teach. Because if they're kind of already beyond what we can offer them, why would we offer them a spot as opposed to somebody who can really learn from us? So take that to heart, because I think that's really helpful. I think it takes some of the pressure off of thinking you have to be perfect when you go into an audition.
So earlier you mentioned about working with a private instructor or a mentor of sorts throughout your years in music school, you know, in whatever your particular instrument is. So can you, like, I did find an article that was saying the importance of having a mentor on your website last night, and could you elaborate on how having a mentor is kind of vital for success as a musician in school and in a career after?
Yes, absolutely. So mentoring is a process that takes place throughout any area, any field. If you end up going to business school, you're going to find that mentoring is a key part of being able to get through school and be successful in finding jobs and continuing on your career path. In music, it's also very, very important. Very oftentimes, your main applied teacher, your private teacher, will also be your mentor. I mean, let's face it, Mr. Knight is a mentor, sure, to all of you and all the students who are in any of the performing arts programs. So it's an individual who knows what it's like to be in your shoes and really wants you to succeed. And these are people who are beyond the level you are at the moment, so they know what you're going to be needing and looking for. But it's also a person you can ask honest questions about so that you can learn what you need in order to take your next steps. The idea behind mentoring is that when you're in that position yourselves, as you become the professionals that you're growing into, you will in turn mentor students who are just coming up the pipeline.
What is your advice for a student pursuing academics and music in their college experience?
If you're a student who feels like they can take on a double major or a dual major, which can be two strands within the same, say, music program or music school, or a major and a minor, and that's not something you necessarily have to decide before you go to college or on day one. Although if you're really drawn to two different areas, and some that fit really well with music, by the way, music and business, especially if there's not a music industry program where you're looking at going to school, those fit really well together. But as I was telling somebody earlier on, there are quite a number of students who major in music who go on to medical school. In fact, we're going to be coming out with an article about that probably in another month. Those are students who may have double majored in music and biology or music and some of the other sciences. Possibly they may have just majored in music and then taken after graduation a 1 to 2 year program, intensive program on sciences so that they can be ready for the MCAT exam and to be able to try to get into medical school. But the fact is you don't have to limit yourself to just music. And if you're a student who has some family reluctance to seeing you major in music, sometimes double majoring or majoring in minoring can be a way to get more acceptance by family members about going into music. A lot of schools are well set up to help you determine which majors work for you. The one thing you really have, or there are many things you have to watch out for. One is, are you overwhelming yourself? Do you then prevent yourself from ever being able to sleep or have any kind of a social life? I mean, it's 4 years of your life, so you really want to be able to use your time well. You want to have friends. You want to be able to let your hair down and enjoy. You want to go to concerts, plays. You know, there are a million things to do as a college student. So if you're finding that all you're doing is preparing for exams and writing papers in the practice room, and you have no time to do anything else, you really have to think about whether it's the right fit. And, you know, at any school, you're going to have advisors, people who are there to help you think these things out. So it's not like you're making a one-time decision that you're stuck with the rest of your life. Students do transfer. They do start at community colleges, obviously to save money, because their GPAs aren't ready for them to be accepted by a 4-year school, because they're really not sure what they want to do. So they want to get some gen ed classes out of the way. If you're a music person and for any of those reasons you decide to go to community college, make sure you get some music theory under your belt. Make sure you keep practicing and working with a private teacher in some way. Chances are, if you go to a community college that has a music school within it, a music department, you will get what you need to be able to transfer to a 4-year school. But you have to make sure that the classes you're taking will be accepted, and you have to do that even before you start. It's a good idea to check that out with a few of the 4-year schools you're looking at, because what you don't want to do is spend 1 or 2 years at a community college to save money, and then you find out that you have to spend 3 or 4 years in the 4-year school. I mean, that would be a waste of your time and money. So you have to really do it with your eyes open and make sure, they call it articulate, that the community college program articulates with the 4-year school so that you really can save time and save money if you want to go that way.
So you talked about the transition from, say, high school or community college to a 4-year university, but what if, once you're in music school, like, what's the best way to go about getting internships? Because music isn't really a field that you'd think would have a lot of internships right off the bat for college sophomores or juniors or seniors. So what's the best way to go about that?
It's a great question, because in music, you really have to be looking at what you're going to do when you graduate the whole way through. It's not a curriculum where you can just be there to enjoy what you're, I mean, you want to enjoy what you're doing, obviously, but unlike other fields that you could major in, you really have to be paying attention to many things all the way through that in other fields you really don't have to be concerned about. If you go to school in chemical engineering, you're pretty much guaranteed, unless you do terribly, that you're going to get a job as soon as you graduate. That is not true in music, no matter what field you enter into, whether it's music education, songwriting, classical music. I mean, there are no guarantees. And more in a lot of fields of engineering and other areas, there aren't guarantees anymore either, except for chemical engineering. But back to music. The fact is that there are all kinds of things you can do from the pretty much, I would say, sophomore on up, that you can do to further delve into an area of music that you're interested in, to get your name out there. Mr. Knight was talking about networking. That's something you have to really think about and start doing early on as a music major, so that you really learn how to put yourself out there, to put your music out there, your songwriting out there, whatever it is you're most interested in, so that people can start knowing who you are. You can get these internships. Your schools, if you're going into music, especially music industry, popular contemporary music, you need to find schools that will help set you up in internships, because that's really what you want to look to your schools to do. But I can tell you, I've worked with a music education major who did an internship with Van Doren, the Reed Company, where he did a lot of writing for them. He's ended up getting himself a writing job with majoringinmusic.com. He's also been hired faster than he ever thought he would be for a teaching job in another city from where he had gone to school. His internship really taught him a lot of the skills that helped him present himself when he started interviewing for a music education job. So the whole idea of internships, which unfortunately are typically not paid, although by the time you're a junior or senior they might be, they're opportunities to get a lot of experience and practice. We have a few articles on majoringinmusic.com about what to look for, and we have students who've gone through, and alumni who've gone through internships to tell you what some things you really should be looking for, because you could end up buying coffee, cleaning the bathroom, all the kinds of things that you didn't go to school for and you didn't take on an internship for. So you really have to be careful about you're interviewing the internship just the way they're interviewing you. You don't want to waste your time. This is precious time. But there are lots of opportunities out there, and your school should help you find them.
So you mentioned a lot of other majors like music education or music composition or music industry. And I was actually approached by a friend who is pursuing music industry, but currently, right now, she's been spending her life performing. So what's a good thing for her to do to ensure that she can still perform, but still study music industry and kind of focus on that, but still have opportunities to perform?
So in the panel that we hosted last week, a couple of the students and one who's a recent graduate were all saying the same thing: never turn down a gig, because you never know what it's going to lead to. So if you're a performer, it's a really important thing to keep your hands on your instrument or keep singing, because you never know what that will open up for you. The fact is that few music majors, when they graduate, are able to just do one thing. Even music teachers. Now, sometimes for music educators, it's because they're so passionate about performing that they can't imagine just being in the classroom. They want to keep up their performance chops, and they also love playing. And what that means is they don't have to depend on performing alone for their income. However, the idea is that in music industry, in performing, in most areas of music, in order to be able to pay your expenses, you're probably going to have to do a number of things. So that means you're probably going to have to be an entrepreneur. Who knows what an entrepreneur is? Okay.
So I'll just repeat his answer. He said it's a person that initiates their own business.
And that's very true. An entrepreneur is also a way of thinking. So a way of thinking about yourself as a business. And so regardless of what area of music you want to go into, having entrepreneurial skills will help you. So let's say back to being a music educator, because a lot of people think, well, I can teach and I can do something else. And that's true. You need, of course, to get credentialed to do that. So you need to go to a school that will offer you the credentialing for whatever state or states you want to teach in. The fact is, as a teacher, just like as a music industry person, just like as a songwriter, just like as any kind of performer, you need to know how to do a number of things. You need to know how to fill the seats in the auditorium. You need to know how to do some fundraising, maybe some grant writing. I mean, there's money out there, but how are you going to get it? You need to know how to get it. That's what entrepreneurial skills will offer you. And so my recommendation is that you look at schools. If you're going into any area of music, you look at schools that have entrepreneurship classes, tracks. Some of them have a whole entrepreneurship department. Some of them you have to put it together yourself and do it through a business school. And this is where going to a university can be helpful if they don't have a dedicated entrepreneurship track. More and more music schools are putting together entrepreneurship programs, though, because they realize that in this day and age, and in the time, by the time you graduate from college, you're going to really need to be able to present and sell what you do in order to be able to get the jobs that you want to get. So it's a good thing to look at now. If that's not something you feel that you want to be good at, because I think pretty much anybody can learn to do that. But if it's not something you're drawn to, it may be that keeping music in your life, minoring in music, but not having the demands of having to have a career in music, that may be your path.
So obviously, from all the different careers you've listed and the different paths that you can take with a music degree, it's kind of a global career, just in general. Music is so international, it's everywhere. But are there any good study abroad options for music majors? Because I'm sure a lot of people that are music majors still want to have that college experience of studying abroad and doing all the things that other academically majored students are doing.
And anybody here think that's something that they might like to do, take a semester or maybe even a whole year in another country? Okay, so a lot of you are interested in that. So some schools are set up to have any student in any area, music or any other area, be able to go through their study abroad office and go to any number of places in the world where those schools have programs. And they have them set up so that if you're on scholarship, your scholarship covers when you're abroad. Your credits will transfer. You will have a rich, wonderful experience, and it will be all part of what you're already doing. And it's something that you typically do in your junior year. It's something you have to start thinking about when you start school so that you get the right classes at the right time. Music is a little different. If you're going for a Bachelor of Music, a BM degree, very oftentimes it's very hard to fit a study abroad program into the normal school year. And it's something you might have to do in the summer. And then the question is, will you be able to pay for that? And so you may have to use some of your entrepreneurial skills to be able to get a grant through your school, and some schools will offer that, to find a way to raise the money. A Bachelor of Arts music major, and the difference between the two, Bachelor of Music, and every school is a little different, but it's basically 75-25, 75% music classes, 25% general education, liberal arts kinds of classes. A Bachelor of Arts, it's kind of reversed. It's more like maybe 65-35 or 75-25 with the 75% in electives and liberal arts classes and the 25% in dedicated music classes. There's more room for study abroad with a BA degree. So a lot of what you decide on your degree really depends on what you think you want to do when you graduate. And there are always ways around if you went as a BA, but then you find that you want to go on to graduate school because you want to be a college professor, or there's some program that you want to have under your belt. There are ways of getting some classes that you need to get in there. You might have to spend a little more time as an undergrad. Some people do spread it out over 5 years. A lot of the double major programs, by the way, do require 5 years. schools that offer them will often offer their scholarships for 5 years as well. So these are all questions you have to ask the individual schools. But in terms of study abroad, and we do have some articles on our website, and we'll continue to have them, there are some great programs around the country. There are also summer music programs. A lot of them are for high school students, so between any of your high school years. But as college students, there are also study abroad programs that are just in the summer. They involve you in music festivals, so that's another way of doing that.
Are there any other questions from the studio audience here? So I'll just repeat her question, just because she's not mic'd. But her question was regarding how difficult it is to actually pursue a career in music after receiving a degree, whether it be a bachelor's degree, a graduate degree, just how difficult it is to get that career that she wants, or anyone, or that a person wants.
So, it's a hard question, at least for me to answer, because in one way, an answer I would give you is it's difficult. But then I would say to you, it's difficult to start a career in any field, except maybe chemical engineering. But, really, so much of it has to do with you. So much of it has to do with what kind of preparation did you allow yourself to get? Because the schools, some of the schools really resent students and parents especially wanting the schools to do it all for you, because they can't. They want to meet you. They'll do their half, you have to do your half. And I have to say, I think you have to do more than your half. You have to learn how to advocate for what you want. College is a great place to do that, because in high school, you do it to some degree, but high schools are set up in such a way that it's done for you. Everything about college is different. You may only go to school 2 days a week and then have a midterm and a final. I mean, it's so different than what you're used to in high school. So quickly, you have to learn time management, really good time management skills. Juggling. I mean, I think of music students as great jugglers. But you know what? That transfers to any career you go into, whether you decide to do something other than music or not. And I want to talk a little bit about transferable skills as soon as I finish a direct answer to you or indirect answer to you. The fact is that what you do for yourself will determine how successful you are. Your flexibility, your willingness to go the extra, 9, 15 yards, whatever, your ability to get yourself some internships, your ability to learn how to network, and how even it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, you're talking to strangers, and yet it's a skill like anything. The more you do it, the more comfortable you are, the better you are at it. And the better you are at it, the more people you're going to have in your world that are going to be there that you can call on to help you find the work that you want to do. So I want to just mention transferable skills because I think this is really important. And what I mean by that, in music school, you learn a lot of skills. You have to be a good collaborator. You have to learn how to manage your time. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to fit in all the rehearsals and the getting ready for shows and performances and all the other classes that you have to do, your liberal arts, your, general ed requirements, etc. So time management is something that's really important and that you have to learn as a music major. They're thinking outside the box, being able to improvise. You don't have to be a jazz major to realize that music requires all kinds of improvisational skills. You're up there on stage and you're about to play your bass, or, something happens to your instrument, or somebody in your trio is sick at the last minute, or, any number of things can happen. As a musician, you learn how to improvise. So there are all kinds of skills that you learn in music school that you can apply to any field you go into. The secret is learning how to talk about what you learned. We have a great article that gives you that highlights on majoringmusic.com the main transferable skills, so that you can learn how to talk about these things in such a way that you can parlay them into any kinds of jobs. Because it may be to become the singer-songwriter that you want to be or get the music industry job that you want to have, that you're going to have to do a number of things along the way. Some of those may not be in music. So to be able to think about those transferable skills and use them to talk to somebody who's looking for, somebody to sell, links, or I don't know, some kind of web developers looking for some help with something. How do the skills you've gotten in music school, how can you talk about them in such a way that they're going to realize you have a background in that?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think it's really nice to just have you here and kind of remind us, like we're being told over and over again, how college is all on you and it's this kind of individualized process. But music school, it's really on you, going to school, applying, internships, everything. But it's nice to know that we do have resources like this. It's on you, but you have Majoring in Music to help you throughout the whole process. So thank you so much for coming in and telling us about all of that.
Absolutely. Can I just say one more thing about that?
Absolutely. Go for it.
I want to make sure you realize that the music schools, it's like a small world. They're there to support you. The faculty is really there to help you become the best in what you want to be and what you want to do that you can possibly be. You're going to be the one that has to ask for that help, but they are there to help you. And what you're looking for when you look at schools, and again, in any field that you go to, how do they come across? How does the faculty come across in terms of how helpful do they appear to be? How, in your camp do they seem to be? How supportive are they of you and other students? And one of the best ways you can find that out is when you start narrowing your choices down and you can go and actually look at a few schools, sit in on some classes. Don't just do that tour where the tour guide is walking backwards and they show you all the best things about the campus. That's great, and you should do it, and you'll learn about the campus in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. Don't settle for that. You need to sit in on some classes, ask for a lesson, because all the faculties, a lot of times they won't charge for the lesson. They're going to use it to look further at you, so it's a great opportunity for you to show them who you are before you audition. But also, you're auditioning them. You want to see, are these schools, are these people the people that I want to put myself in front of for 4 years and spend all this money to do this? Mr. Knight, by the way, asked me to mention to you that if you are a strong academic student and you took PSATs and you did really well in the merit,
National Merit Scholar.
If you're a National Merit Scholar, a lot of schools will actually pay half your tuition. Some schools will actually give you a full ride with that. So we actually have a whole page of scholarships on our site. Some of them are, will be totally irrelevant to who you are. Some of them will be very relevant. If getting money for school is something you need, and these days most students do, take a look at that page and read closely what it says about each one of them, and then check the links to see if maybe it's something that you could apply for. You can contact me through the website. My email is all over the place, Barbara@majoringinmusic.com. You can ask questions on any, or comment on any of the articles. You can actually ask questions of any of the schools on majoringinmusic.com. They each have a little form. You tell them basically what your question is. We'll make sure that those go directly to somebody that we work with at all of those schools so that they can answer your question directly. Please feel free to fill out any of those. The more schools know about you, the more they think of you as a serious student. And that's to your benefit if you decide to actually apply to them and audition there. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
You were great.